Welcome to our deep dive into the hidden history behind Christmas traditions.
Yeah.
You know those traditions we hold dear, the ones that make the season so special. Well, get ready for some surprises because a lot of them have roots that go back way further than you might imagine, winding their way through ancient cultures and centuries past.
It's true.
By the end of this deep dive, you might never look at your Christmas tree the same way again.
What's so captivating is that the story of Christmas isn't like a straightforward thing.
Right.
It's more like a tapestry woven from all these different threads of history and belief and tradition.
So let's start unraveling those threads.
Okay.
And where better place to begin than ancient Babylon? We're talking way, way back, long before the Christian era.
It is remarkable how much of what we consider Christmas can be traced back to ancient Babylonian winter solstice festivals. These celebrations marked the shortest day and longest night of the year.
Yeah.
A time of anticipation for the sun's return.
Okay, so I'm picturing these ancient Babylonians bundled up for the winter solstice.
Yeah.
Were they already decking their halls with boughs of holly?
Not quite holly.
Okay.
But they did decorate trees. And you might be surprised to know that they adorn them with silver and gold.
Silver and gold?
Yeah.
That sounds kind of familiar.
Right.
So were they just trying to make things look festive, or was there like a deeper meaning behind those decorations?
It wasn't just about aesthetics.
Okay.
For the Babylonians, decorating trees with precious metals was a way to honor their deities.
Right.
Particularly during the winter solstice when they celebrated the sun god's return. Imagine they were seeking to bring a piece of that divine light and energy into their homes during the darkest time of the year.
I see.
Yeah.
So it was a way to like connect with the divine and invite blessings during a time of transition.
Exactly.
But those ancient Babylonians weren't the only ones who saw the winter solstice as something special, right?
Absolutely. The significance of the winter solstice resonated across many ancient cultures.
Okay.
It wasn't just about the astronomical event itself,
Right.
but about the symbolism it represented.
Yeah.
Light emerging from darkness, rebirth, renewal, the promise of spring's return.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a powerful concept that seems to have touched cultures far and wide.
And speaking of far and wide, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
December 25th, the date we celebrate Christmas, was already a significant date in many pagan cultures, long before Christianity.
I've heard whispers about other deities having birthdays around that time. Is there any truth to that?
There is indeed.
Okay.
Several deities, all associated with the sun, were believed to be born on or around December 25th.
Okay.
Horus in Egypt, Helios in Greece, Mithra in Persia.
Wow.
The list goes on.
So the shared birthday wasn't just a coincidence.
Right.
It all ties back to that powerful symbolism of the sun's return.
Exactly.
The promise of light and rebirth.
And this shared symbolism becomes even more intriguing.
Yeah.
When we consider how December 25th became the official date for Christmas.
I have a feeling this is where Emperor Constantine enters the picture.
You're right on track.
Okay.
In 325 CE, Emperor Constantine made the decision to officially recognize December 25th as Christmas Day.
So was this based on some newfound biblical evidence that pinpointed Jesus' birth date?
Not quite.
Okay.
There's no actual biblical support for December 25th as Jesus' birth date.
Right.
In fact, as we mentioned earlier, the biblical accounts suggest a different time of year altogether.
So if it wasn't based on biblical accuracy, what motivated Constantine's decision? There has to be more to the story.
There is.
Okay.
You see, Constantine was a shrewd ruler.
Okay.
And his decision to align Christmas with the existing pagan celebrations of December 25th was a strategic one.
Okay.
He was aiming to unify pagan and Christian traditions, create a sense of shared identity, and easing the transition for pagan converts to Christianity.
Ah, a clever political move.
It was.
So instead of trying to stamp out those deeply rooted pagan traditions, he chose to incorporate them into the Christian calendar.
Yeah.
Pretty savvy, actually.
It was a brilliant strategy.
Okay.
And it largely worked. But as you can imagine, not everyone was thrilled with this merging of traditions.
Yeah, I can see how that could cause some tension.
Yeah.
Especially among those who saw those pagan practices as incompatible with their Christian faith.
Exactly.
Right.
Early Christian writers, like Tertullian, expressed concerns about Christians participating in these pagan-influenced festivals. They saw it as a compromise.
Okay.
A dilution of the faith's purity.
It sounds like there was quite a debate brewing. even back then, about the authenticity of Christmas celebrations.
And that debate, in many ways, continues to this day.
Wow.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
How a holiday can be so deeply woven into our culture, so cherished by so many, yet still carry this undercurrent of tension and controversy.
It's a reminder that even the most familiar traditions have complex and sometimes surprising backstories.
Definitely.
Speaking of surprising backstories, let's talk about those Roman celebrations.
Okay.
I'm hearing whispers of Saturnalia.
Ah, Saturnalia.
What can you tell us about that?
It was a week-long Roman festival held in December, originally from the 17th to the 19th,
Okay.
though it was later extended to a full week, culminating on the 25th. It was dedicated to Saturn, the god of agriculture.
Okay.
And it involved a lot of revelry, much like our modern Christmas celebrations.
So were they essentially having a Roman version of Christmas, complete with gift-giving and festive decorations?
In many ways, yes.
Okay.
There were gift exchanges, public feasts, music, singing,
Wow.
and decorations with greenery.
It's amazing to think that some of our modern Christmas customs might have their roots in these ancient Roman festivities.
And there's one particularly intriguing detail about Saturnalia that might surprise you. During the festival, there was a temporary reversal of social roles, where slaves were allowed to speak freely to their masters.
Oh, wow.
And even be served by them.
Wow, that's quite a twist.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what those early Christians must have thought, seeing these pagan celebrations happening right alongside their own emerging traditions.
It certainly adds another layer of complexity to the story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And speaking of layers, let's shift our focus to a symbol that's because synonymous with Christmas, the Christmas tree.
Oh, okay.
You might be surprised to learn just how deep its roots go in pagan practices across various cultures.
I'm all ears.
Okay.
Tell me everything. Did those ancient Egyptians and Romans have their own versions of Christmas trees?
They did indeed. The Egyptians, for instance, incorporated palm trees into their winter solstice rituals. These trees symbolize their pagan messiah, Baal Tamar.
Baal Tamar. That's a new one for me.
Yeah.
Who was this figure in Egyptian mythology?
Baal Tamar was a significant figure in their pantheon, often associated with resurrection and new life, themes that resonated with the winter solstice.
Right.
Bringing those palm branches into their homes was a way to connect with those ideas of rebirth and renewal.
It's fascinating how different cultures used different types of trees to symbolize those universal concepts of rebirth and hope during the darkest time of the year. So what about the Romans? Did they use palm trees too?
The Romans favored fir trees, which they associated with Baal Berith, their divine mediator.
Okay, 2 Baal deities in a row. I'm sensing a pattern here. Who was Baal Berith in the Roman pantheon? And why was he associated with fir trees?
Baal Berith was a powerful deity, a sort of intermediary between the gods and humanity. The Romans believed that fir trees, with their evergreen needles, represented immortality and the enduring strength of the natural world qualities they attributed to Baal Berith.
It's amazing how these trees, which we now so strongly associate with Christmas, held such deep spiritual significance for these ancient cultures.
It really is. And we can't forget about the Babylonians, who also incorporated trees into their winter solstice rituals. They used trees in their worship of Nimrod, a legendary figure who was later deified as the sun god.
So we've got palm trees, fir trees, and now trees associated with the Babylonian sun god.
Yeah.
It seems like trees were a pretty universal symbol across these different cultures. But what about those decorations? When did people start hanging shiny baubles and twinkling lights on those trees?
Well, remember those Babylonian rituals we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Where they decorated trees with silver and gold?
Right.
That practice was a direct precursor to our modern Christmas tree decorations.
So those glittering ornaments we hang on our trees today are like echoes of ancient Babylonian sun worship.
I love how these seemingly modern traditions have such deep historical roots.
And it goes beyond just the silver and gold. Even those seemingly mundane decorations like tinsel have a connection to those ancient beliefs.
Tinsel. That sparkly stuff that gets tangled everywhere. What's the story there? Believe it or not, tinsel is meant to represent the divine spark or light of the gods. Remember how ancient cultures were fascinated by the sun's return during the winter solstice?
Yeah.
Tinsel, with its shimmering reflective surface, was a way to bring a piece of that divine light into their homes, a tiny, sparkly tribute to the sun god.
I never would have guessed that something as simple as tinsel could have such a deep symbolic meaning. It makes you look at those Christmas decorations a bit differently. What about those glass balls we hang on the tree? Do they have a hidden history too?
They do. Those shiny, colorful balls, particularly the ones in gold or silver, are believed to have originally symbolized the sun itself. It's another example of how ancient symbols have been reinterpreted and incorporated into modern celebrations.
It's fascinating how those ancient beliefs about the sun's power and the return of light have persisted through the centuries, finding new expression in our modern traditions. What about those festive garlands? They always add such a beautiful touch to a Christmas tree. Do they have any connection to ancient practices?
Garlands are interesting because they mimic the serpentine shapes found in ancient mythology. Think about snakes or dragons, powerful forces of nature that were both feared and revered.
I see the resemblance. Those serpentine shapes have a certain mystical quality to them. So were ancient people trying to invoke those powerful forces by incorporating them into their decorations?
It's certainly possible. Those shapes held deep symbolic meaning for many cultures, representing everything from fertility and abundance to protection and spiritual energy. It's fascinating to think about how those ancient symbols might still be resonating with us today, even if we're not consciously aware of their original meanings.
It's like these traditions are carrying whispers of the past, connecting us to those ancient beliefs and rituals in ways we might not even fully comprehend.
Precisely. And that's what makes exploring the history of these traditions so intriguing. We begin to see how our modern celebrations are layered with meaning, woven from threads that stretch back through time.
Speaking of layering, we've talked a lot about trees and decorations, but what about some of those other Christmas customs? I'm thinking about candles, mistletoe, wreaths. They all evoke that warm, cozy feeling of the holiday season. Do they have any connection to those ancient practices we've been discussing?
They absolutely do. Take candles, for instance. The warm glow of candlelight is such an integral part of Christmas, creating a sense of ambiance and celebration. But that tradition also has roots in ancient practices.
I'm ready to be enlightened. Tell me more about the history of candlelight during the holidays.
Well, remember those Babylonian and Roman winter festivals we talked about?
Right.
Candles played a significant role in the rituals. They represented light, warmth, and the honoring of deities. Lighting candles was a way to invoke the presence of those divine forces and to symbolize the triumph of light over darkness, a theme that resonates so strongly with the winter solstice.
I can see the connection. Those flickering flames evoke a sense of warmth and hope, a beacon of light in the midst of winter's darkness. It's a powerful image that transcends cultures and time. So were those ancient Babylonians and Romans the first ones to bring candlelight into their winter celebrations?
They were certainly among the earliest cultures to do so, but the symbolism of candlelight stretches back even further. Think about the hearth fire, the central point of warmth and light in ancient homes. That flickering fire represented not just physical warmth, but also a sense of community and connection, a gathering place for families and tribes.
It's amazing how something as simple as a candle flame can carry so much symbolic weight, connecting us to those primal human needs for warmth, light, and connection.
And that connection to the past is what makes exploring these traditions so fascinating.
Yeah.
We begin to see how our modern celebrations are layered with meaning, woven from threads that stretch back through time.
So we've got candles representing light and hope. What about mistletoe? I have to admit, I've always been a bit curious about that one. What's the story behind that little sprig we hang up for holiday kisses?
Mistletoe has a long and fascinating history, steeped in folklore and ancient beliefs. It was considered sacred in many cultures, particularly among the Celts and Norse. They saw it as a symbol of fertility, peace, and protection.
So hanging mistletoe was a way to invite those positive energies into the home. But how did we get from sacred plant to holiday kisses? That seems like quite a leap.
The tradition of kissing under the mistletoe is thought to have originated from those ancient beliefs about fertility and peace. It was seen as a way to seal a truce, to promote harmony and goodwill, and perhaps even to encourage a little bit of romance.
That makes sense. It's like a ritualistic way to create a moment of connection and affection. So mistletoe is all about love and peace. What about wreaths? Are they also steeped in ancient symbolism?
Wreaths, especially those made from evergreens, have a rich history that dates back centuries. They were used in ancient Roman festivals as symbols of victory and eternal life. The circular shape of the wreath represented the cycle of life and death, the enduring power of nature, and the promise of renewal.
It's interesting how that symbolism of renewal ties back to the winter solstice and those ancient celebrations of the sun's return. It seems like there's a common thread running through all of these traditions, a yearning for light, hope, and the promise of new beginnings.
You've hit upon a crucial insight. Despite their diverse origins, these traditions all converge around those universal human desires for connection, celebration, and the triumph of light over darkness.
It's a beautiful reminder that even though we might celebrate Christmas in different ways, those core values and aspirations transcend cultures and time, uniting us in a shared experience. But speaking of different ways of celebrating, I have to ask, given all this talk about pagan origins, how do some Christian communities feel about Christmas celebrations today? It seems like there might be some tension there.
That's a perceptive observation. And you're right, there is some tension. As we've discussed, many of the traditions we associate with Christmas have roots in pagan practices, and some Christian groups find that problematic.
So are they saying we should ditch the Christmas tree and cancel Santa? I mean, those traditions are so deeply ingrained in our culture, it's hard to imagine Christmas without them.
It's not quite that simple. It's more nuanced than that. Some Christian communities choose to focus primarily on the religious aspects of Christmas, celebrating the birth of Jesus, and emphasizing the spiritual meaning of the holiday. They might downplay the secular traditions like Santa Claus and gift-giving, or they might choose to reinterpret them in a Christian context.
So it's about finding a balance between the historical and religious aspects of the holiday, acknowledging the pagan roots while still honoring the Christian significance of the celebration.
Exactly, and it's a conversation that continues to this day, with different perspectives and approaches within Christianity.
It's fascinating to think about how Christmas has evolved into this complex tapestry of traditions, blending ancient beliefs with Christian faith and modern cultural practices.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, how will Christmas continue to evolve in the future? What new traditions will emerge? And how will we continue to grapple with the holiday's rich and sometimes controversial history?
Those are great questions to ponder as we head into the final part of our deep dive. We've explored the ancient roots of Christmas, from Babylonian rituals to Roman revelry, and we've touched on the ongoing debate about the holiday's authenticity, but there's still more to uncover.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the surprising history of Christmas. We've journeyed from ancient Babylon to Roman Saturnalia, uncovering the pagan roots of many beloved Christmas traditions.
Right.
But as we kind of hinted at before, this blending of cultures and beliefs hasn't been without its critics.
That's right. As we've been exploring, the history of Christmas is anything but straightforward.
Right.
And for some Christian communities,
the intertwining of pagan elements with the celebration of Jesus' birth raises some valid questions about the authenticity of modern Christmas traditions.
So it's not just about those early Christian writers who were a bit hesitant about the merging of traditions way back in the 3rd century.
Right.
These concerns are still relevant today.
Absolutely.
Okay.
These concerns persist,
Yeah.
and they often center around the historical discrepancies we've discussed,
Right.
particularly regarding the date of December 25th.
Right. We talked about the lack of biblical evidence supporting December 25th as Jesus' actual birth date.
Right.
The shepherds tending their flocks in the middle of winter, the census that wouldn't have happened during harsh weather.
Yeah.
It all points to a different time of year for Jesus' birth.
Exactly. And for some Christians, that discrepancy is a significant issue. They argue that celebrating Christmas on a date chosen for its alignment with pagan festivals compromises the religious integrity of the holiday.
I can see their point. It's like we're celebrating on a date that was essentially a political compromise rather than a biblically accurate one.
Right.
It makes you wonder, how much of our modern Christmas is rooted in faith and how much is a product of cultural and historical forces?
That's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the date.
Right.
Some Christian communities also take issue with specific traditions that have those deep-rooted pagan origins.
Yeah.
Particularly the Christmas tree.
Which, as we've learned, has a long and complicated history.
Yeah.
From ancient Egypt to Roman festivals and Babylonian rituals. It's hard to imagine Christmas without a tree, but I can understand how its ancient associations might be concerning for some.
The Christmas tree, for some, becomes a symbol of those ancient practices that they see as incompatible with their faith.
Okay.
They argue that it distracts from the true meaning of Christmas, which is the celebration of Jesus' birth.
So for them, it's not just about the historical origins of the tree, but about the potential for those origins to overshadow or even contradict the religious meaning of Christmas.
Right.
It's like the very symbol of the holiday becomes a point of contention.
You've grasped the essence of their argument.
Okay.
And this concern extends beyond just the tree.
Right.
Some Christian communities feel that the emphasis on secular traditions Santa Claus, gift-giving, lavish decorations, can shift the focus away from the spiritual message of Christmas.
It's like the commercialization of Christmas has created this tension between the sacred and the secular, where the focus on buying gifts and putting up elaborate displays can sometimes feel at odds with the spiritual message of the holiday.
That's a very insightful observation. And it's a tension that many people, regardless of their religious beliefs, can relate to.
Yeah.
Even those who celebrate Christmas in a secular way often feel a sense of disconnect between the commercial frenzy and the deeper meaning of the holiday, whether it's about family, generosity, or simply appreciating the beauty of the season.
It's like we're all trying to find that balance.
Yeah.
To navigate this complex holiday that's woven from so many different threads of history, belief, and tradition.
Right.
Knowing all of this, how do we approach Christmas in a way that feels authentic and meaningful?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the answer is personal.
Okay.
How we choose to celebrate Christmas is a reflection of our own values, beliefs, and understanding of the holiday's complex history.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer, but the key is to be aware of those different perspectives.
Right.
And to approach the holiday with intention and thoughtfulness.
So what does all of this mean for our listeners who are now armed with this fascinating and sometimes controversial knowledge about the hidden history of Christmas?
It's an invitation to think critically about those cherished traditions.
Right.
And to consider what they mean to us personally. Does knowing the deep and sometimes controversial roots of Christmas customs change your perspective on the holiday? Does it make you want to modify how you celebrate?
It's a lot to think about, but I think that's the beauty of a deep dive like this.
Yeah.
It challenges our assumptions, expands our understanding, and ultimately empowers us to make more conscious and meaningful choices about how we celebrate, not just Christmas, but all aspects of our lives.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I encourage you, dear listener, to continue exploring the history and traditions of Christmas. Delve deeper. Consider those different perspectives, and ultimately find what resonates most with you. After all, the most meaningful traditions are those that we choose with intention and awareness.
That's a perfect thought to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden history of Christmas.